I'm Jenn de la Vega.
And I'm Clara Park. Welcome to the Cinema Chefs.
The podcast for people who love to cook, watch movies, and cook what they see in movies. Today, we are going to talk about Forrest Gump. Some spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the movie.
What's the one-sentence summary of the movie? According to IMDb, the history of the United States from the 1950s to the 1980s unfolds from the perspective of an Alabama man with an IQ of 75 who yearns to be reunited with his childhood sweetheart. And he runs a lot.
It's true. It's a significant part of the movie.
Yeah, he runs a lot. Fun fact about that, he has a brother, Jim Hanks.
Yes.
Who was his double for a lot of the running scenes. And there was so much like facial hair and mud and hats and stuff. I think that, everyone always is like, oh, it's his twin. They're not actually twins. It's his brother.
Oh, it's his
brother. But they look very, very similar.
Very, very similar. Yeah, I think what was behind that is the film was running close to over budget. And they could not move the production to every single state that it took place in. They had the brother go around with a skeleton crew of just a camera person and maybe a PA, and they went running around the country.
That
like
is amazing.
Literal.
Yeah. I imagine Jim Hanks is much cheaper than Tom Hanks.
He's off, recording sequels to Toy Story and stuff. So
being world famous.
Busy man.
Yeah. And then it's funny, I was looking this up. He won an Oscar for Philadelphia. Woohoo!
Yes.
Then right after, in 95, he won for Forrest Gump. And then he won again in 2001 for Castaway. And then he has a supporting Oscar for the Mr. Rogers movie, like Will You Be My Neighbor, I believe it's called.
Whoa.
So I mean, he's got a lot of those statues.
Yeah,
amazing.
I knew he was decorated, but I didn't realize how decorated.
Yeah, and I think his career spans like decades. I think the back-to-back Oscars, that was like mega, colossal achievement, but everything's kind of spread out. We don't really think about it. But yeah, he is wildly successful, and then apparently also like the nicest person on earth. So
I believe it.
Yeah, you never hear bad stories. Like, Tom Hanks really is the everyman, obviously very wealthy and successful, but I think that's why he resonates so much with the American public, because you feel like he could be your neighbor.
When you think about Forrest Gump, what food do you think of?
Shrimp.
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 Shrimp. And why is shrimp significant at all?
I think people kind of take for granted Bubba Gump Shrimp, but, Bubba was his best friend and army buddy. And he grew up on a shrimping boat, and he taught Forrest everything he knew about shrimping. And that was the promise, is that he was going to be a shrimp boat captain, and Forrest Gump was going to be his first mate. And Forrest Gump, being such a good person and true to his word, Bubba dies in Vietnam, but he keeps his promise and becomes a shrimping boat captain because he'd learned everything about shrimp. And then names the boat Jenny, of course. But I think... what struck me was the shrimp monologue that Bubba does about all the different ways you can cook shrimp. I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie, because I'm old enough that I saw it in the theater. And I remember that it just went on and on and on.
It's such a funny gag. It works.
Oh, totally.
They're in the middle of the Vietnam War. They're making light of this very difficult situation.
You can barbecue it, boil it, broil it, bake it, saute it, shrimp kebabs, shrimp creole, shrimp gumbo, pan-fried, deep-fried, stir-fried, pineapple shrimp, lemon shrimp, coconut shrimp, pepper shrimp, shrimp soup, shrimp stew, shrimp salad, shrimp potatoes, shrimp burger, shrimp sandwich. And then you and I, as chefs and nerds and type A women, we also came up with things that they did not talk about.
Yeah, there are a lot of other ways to prepare shrimp. That quote appears at 34 minutes, 7 seconds. It is in Vietnam. We actually have the first mention of shrimp at 32 minutes, 18 seconds. Benjamin Bluford Blue, a.k.a. Bubba, asks Forrest, have you ever been on a real shrimp boat? I thought it was very funny that the
Hilarious.
only moments that we actually see cooked shrimp are part of a multi-scene gag where Bubba is explaining his mama made shrimp, his grandmama made shrimp, and the scene is of black women coming out of the kitchen with a large pot serving rich white men. It is
Yep.
so funny. But we actually never see the cooked shrimp in the pot. So we don't exactly know the preparation of it. And then later, I. Man, I got every timestamp. I'm not going to
I
go through
know.
every single one.
You're so good at it.
But we get the shrimping boat at an hour, 28 minutes. Forrest is shrimping, and he only catches 5 the first time. So
Yep.
we see some live shrimp on
Yep.
camera. At 1 hour, 36 minutes, he says, we even got hats, because he's back on the park bench waiting
Yes.
for the bus. And you see the Bubba Gump Shrimp logo for the first time. And at 1 hour, 38 minutes, I'm not even sure what he's eating, but he's eating from a Bubba Gump Shrimp jar. And I'm assuming that it's a jarred cocktail shrimp. Not sure.
Yeah, no, I think it is from Cocktail. And I think what's kind of interesting is I haven't seen this movie since it came out in 94. That one scene encapsulates how successful their business is.
Yes.
That they're sitting on this boat eating their own merchandise.
Watching TV.
That's watching TV that's branded. You have to remember this is early 80s, right? Late 70s, early 80s when they're doing all these things. And
We didn't have Wi-Fi.
No.
Like, there's no Wi-Fi yet.
No, but it was such a clever way to show how successful their shrimp boat business had been. And they make a reference to, I believe it's Hurricane Carmen, decimated all the boats, and their boat was the only one standing. I believe he says, we became really successful. Everyone still needed shrimp. We have 12 Jenny's warehouse, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of wild. And then I think also funny, Bubba Gump Shrimp, it's in Times Square. Like every time I go to New York, I'll drive by it. And this movie was so wildly successful that it spawned a very successful franchise. And I think it's like, almost 36 worldwide, which is just out of control that an idea from a movie became an actual eatery, a business.
Let me tell you about it. I looked up a bunch of info about it. The Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, in real life, opened its first location in Monterey, California, in partnership with Paramount in 1996. So this is 2 years after the film came out. If you don't know where Monterey is, it is the home of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. It's one of the largest in the country. It sits on Cannery Row, where canned sardines were produced from the 1920s to about the 50s. But unfortunately, that whole industry collapsed because it was overfished.
That's also something interesting. The Monterey Bay Aquarium does like their own seafood watch because people need to be more responsible about where they're getting their seafood from, how it's being caught, and the sustainability factor. So shrimp we love shrimp, right? The average American consumes 5.5 pounds of shrimp a year. Like that is a lot of shrimp.
That's a lot of freaking shrimp. What are shrimp? They are a type of shellfish or crustacean with a head, thorax, and that signature long body. Did you know their little arms are called swimmerettes?
No, I saw that. You wrote that. I was like, wow, that sounds like a made-up word.
Most shrimp are marine, while a quarter of species live in freshwater. Of the 33 million that have a food allergy in general, 8.4 million people in the U.S. are allergic to shellfish.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
It's me. I also have a shrimp allergy, but I will not shy away from the shrimp. I still cook with it in my work, in my daily jobs.
I think that's something that our listeners should be aware of. Just because you're allergic to something doesn't mean that you won't be asked to cook with it or handle it.
Yeah.
Unless it's a super debilitating allergy where if you touch it, you'll have a reaction. But I've definitely had to do stuff with orange juice, orange zest. People love shrimp, so...
This is why gloves are great in the kitchen.
Yeah. Safety first. Safety first. And,
make sure your gloves fit, by the way.
Yeah, and I think also, when we were talking about things that we wanted to cover, I love shrimp, and aside from Bubba's monologue, there really are a million ways to cook shrimp. And I think there's a lot of different price points. There's a lot of preparations. It can be cold. It can be hot. Obviously, what's your favorite shrimp preparation?
Let's see. I don't actually like eating the shrimp itself.
Okay, fair.
I like condiments. I like bagoong, which is a shrimp paste in the Philippines. I also like tiny dried shrimp that you hydrate and you stir fry it.
Yeah.
You stir fry it with Vietnamese street corn, and it is insane. It is so good.
My favorite is coconut shrimp. Not only coconut shrimp, but Red Lobster.
Oh my
shrimp.
God.
Someone I knew a long time ago that I worked with was like, you're obsessed with Red Lobster. I was like, no, I'm obsessed with the coconut shrimp and Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster. I don't really care for the other stuff, but I will drive to a Red Lobster just to get those coconut shrimp. And I've tried other coconut shrimp.
Wow.
And they're not as tender. I feel like they get really rubbery and overcooked. And the red lobster ones are always crispy on the outside, tender and delicious. But I think we can dive into Bubba's monologue because that's why we're here. We're talking about food from the movie. Broil and bake. Oh, obviously broiling, it's just a higher intensity heat. Typically you broil something, it's like 500 degrees Fahrenheit. From above, right. Top down. And then baking, it's a lower temperature. Most people bake usually in the center of the oven. You could do it like lower third, but when you broil something, it's usually a couple inches away from that intense burner. You have to be careful. It's usually kind of like a flash, like broil for a couple minutes in and out, whereas baking is usually a longer cook time.
And the heating element is coming from the bottom.
Right, which makes a difference. I think whenever I'm talking to people about cooking, one of the most important rules of cooking is control your heat, right? What's the intensity? Where's it coming from? Are you cooking in dry heat? Are you cooking in liquid? All these things will make a difference with your final dish.
So typically when you're broiling and baking shrimp, it's not for very long, right?
No.
It's because they're small.
Great point. Size does matter. Shrimp usually implies things that are small, but shrimp have a classification system, which is U. It's the U classification system. The U stands for under. The largest shrimp are colossal, and that's U10. It's under 10 per pound. Then below, those are monsters. The larger the shrimp, the more expensive they tend to be.
Yes.
Right below colossal is jumbo, U11 to 15. Below that, extra large, U16 to 20, and then large, 21 to 30, medium, 31 to 35, and then small, 36 to 45. Jenn and I are both of the Asian persuasion, and all around Asia, there are all these really, 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 really tiny shrimp. She was talking about the dried shrimp that you rehydrate. Koreans have something called seojut, which is salted shrimp that you use to make kimchi, and that's like hundreds in a pound because they're so small.
Brine shrimp. Yeah, we have brine shrimp.
Yeah, no, exactly. But they're like little teeny tiny. They're almost sort of like, like, I don't know, the size of a large eyelash.
Like
I mean,
krill.
they're pretty small. But I actually am not a fan of the colossal.
That's
visually,
too big.
Yeah, I think for me, as the shrimp get really large, I feel like the texture, to cook them all the way through, you got to cook them longer, so they get kind of rubbery. I don't think they're as sweet. I don't think they're as succulent. And cost a fortune.
Dang.
For my money, I don't need the colossal shrimp.
It's sort of like the same principle of like growing a giant zucchini. Like it's gonna have less flavor. Like it's all spread out.
And lobster. One year for my dad's Father's Day seafood boil, that's what he wanted. I got a 3-pound lobster because the lady talked me into it.
Dang.
I mean, it looked really cool, but I just didn't think the meat was that great because I feel like young vegetables, young meat, young crustaceans are going to taste better. That's just me, but some people really want that visual, look at these shrimp. I've even seen, I don't even know what they're called. It's like super colossal. It's U5 to 7.
I feel like that's going to attack me in the middle of the night.
It's a small animal, but
that's the shrimp from Beetlejuice, the one that grabs your face.
Before we go into like cooking methods, if you've ever spent time in the UK, you rarely see the word shrimp. It's always prawn. I'd like some prawns. The prawn
flavored
salad.
chips. Yeah.
Right. And parts of Asia as well. And so I looked into this because in my mind, I thought they were kind of interchangeable. If there was a difference, I thought that prawns were bigger than shrimp.
That's the impression I got, yeah.
Yeah, but they are actually different crustaceans. So they're both crustaceans, and they both have 10 legs, or what do you call them, swimmerettes?
Swimmerettes.
Yeah, and then prawns, the pinchers or the pincers, they're placed differently on shrimp versus prawns. That's a little bit confusing because, I mean, are you going to really look at it and be like, hey, where are your pincers? No. An easier way, the way that the exoskeleton is formed, shrimp curl, prawns stay straight. That's a really easy visual cue. And also prawns tend to be bigger. They were saying that prawns tend to be freshwater and shrimp tend to be saltwater.
Got it.
If we want to get super nerdy, I do have a master's in biology. Crustaceans are invertebrates. Shrimp it's an exoskeleton. They are arthropods, which are also like, that's also the...
Bug kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. Bug kingdom. And crustaceans are crabs, lobster, shrimp. You know, it's some of my favorite things to eat. And then also the arthropoda, as you said, it's insect, spider, crustacean. Those are the three things that fall under that. Yeah, exactly. Arachnid. You're,
Wait, did we ever talk about this? I also
What?
have a background in science.
I feel like we did,
Maybe,
but please
I don't know.
illuminate some
I
more.
went to Davis and I was studying muscle
That's
myology.
UC Davis, guys.
UC Davis. I was studying myology, and in preparation for that, I was studying bees and a lot of marine biology. So this is very familiar territory
This
to
is
me.
so up your alley.
Love it.
And I think this is why we get along.
We're very
Nerds
science-minded.
unite. Different ways to cook shrimp. We went over broiling, baking, but then also poaching shrimp versus steaming shrimp. Poaching shrimp, you have the benefit of flavoring your poaching liquid. You could do corp bouillon. That's just a fancy way of saying like herbs, citrus, whatever you want to put in it. We used to do a Thai poached shrimp salad. We did
love.
basil, cilantro stems. See, stems, no waste. That's another show. But basil stems, cilantro stems, which have all the flavor of the herb. We would squeeze fresh lime juice for something. So then we'd throw the lime zest or lime, I don't know, carcasses?
Yeah.
What do you call those? Lime.
The spent lime.
The spent lime halves, the squeezed limes, we'd throw those in. And then if there was like, onion peel or whatever. So we would throw a really flavorful herb stem scrap, lime wedge scrap, throw it into this liquid to make a corp bouillon, and we would poach the shrimp in it. Then building on flavor, when we made that poached shrimp salad, it had all these fresh herbs. It had lime juice, fish sauce, sugar, garlic. Wow. It's a way of using, yeah, right? You're building, like the shrimp already know. They already swim in that lusciousness. And then you add more. It's layering flavor without wasting ingredients, which I think is really important.
That is such great advice, flavoring your poaching liquid. I think
for sure.
The key thing about poaching is we need to stop the cooking.
What does that mean, stop the cooking, Chef Jenn?
So poaching shrimp is you've prepped a pot of boiling liquid. You've dunked your shrimp for, would you say, 30 seconds or a minute?
I think it depends on what classification it is.
It depends on how big the shrimp is. You poach it for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And to stop the cooking, we prepare an ice bath and
Yep.
plunge the shrimp so that it doesn't overcook. And you get that great texture.
Yes, and because shrimp tend to be pretty small, not very thick, if you don't cold shock it in an ice bath, it'll continue cooking. And the cardinal sin of shrimp cookery is overcooking it. All that rubbery, chewy, plasticky.
Oof.
That's the worst thing you can do to shrimp is overcook them. It's not a cheap ingredient. We should always be mindful of making sure that we prepare it the best we can and to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do is steam. You're
Yes.
not putting it in a liquid. And a lot of crab houses, crab shacks will do steamed shrimp. Baltimore, I'm sure you've been. You get the steamed shrimp covered in Old Bay, covered in onions, and they just douse it with all those spices. Steam is very hot. I don't know if you guys
Oh, I've burned myself
realize
on
it.
steam. Yeah.
Steam
Gotta be
is
careful.
very, very, very hot. So it's quick, yay, but you have to add all the flavor to the shrimp. It's not in the air. And then pan fry versus deep fry versus stir fry. What do you think is the best way to do it?
It depends on the preparation and texture that I want in the end. Like,
Okay. Can you elaborate?
the difference between these heating elements is
Yeah.
pan frying is a hot pan,
Yes.
some kind of oil, and we're flipping the shrimp once. Deep fry is we're plunging the shrimp into a prepared, temperature-controlled oil, so it's fully submerged in oil. Stir fry is in a wok where high heat cooking the shrimp and tossing it around. So if it's something like, if it has accompaniments, like if it's a fried rice or it's noodles or if it's a stir fry, then stir frying is great. But
Yeah.
if I want to bread the shrimp, if I want to
Batter.
wrap lumpia wrapper or wonton wrapper around it, then deep frying is the best way to do it. Pan frying, I tend to not do it, actually. It's more of like
Yeah.
a weeknight preparation if you're not making a lot of shrimp.
Yeah, I don't really pan fry or saute my shrimp. I'm a big fan of deep fry. Obviously, I love coconut shrimp. And then I think the stir fry, right? I usually get medium large.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do extra large if it's on sale. So they cook relatively quickly. I like the high heat, the quick sear, add in whatever else. Best accompaniments, I think citrus goes really well with shrimp, not
Yeah.
orange. Shrimp and lemon, I think, is match made in heaven. I also love shrimp and mayonnaise. That is my American
I
girl
don't
side
prefer
coming
that.
out. I love mayonnaise. I love mayonnaise. So
I love mayonnaise, but I don't
shrimp
know if I love
salad,
mayonnaise.
you know, fried shrimp, tartar sauce, aioli. I really, really love shrimp and mayonnaise together.
I serve shrimp with sweet chili sauce,
That's so good too.
especially if I'm making lumpia shrimp. They're really cute.
So please tell our listeners what lumpia wrappers are.
Lumpia is the sort of egg roll from the Philippines, and it's made with this earth-shatteringly crisp skin. It's very, very thin. You also might find it in Vietnamese specialty stores as spring roll. So it doesn't bubble up. It's very smooth when you fry it. But one of the easiest ways to make lumpia is to shell a shrimp and wrap the lumpia wrapper around it so the little tail is sticking out.
Amazing.
And then you just deep fry that until it's golden brown.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
And then you got a little
shrimp.
You got a little thing to
hold it. You got a little
too.
handle, you know, so you don't have to touch the really hot
part. Nature's handle, the shrimp tail. Wait, so let's talk about that. You get your shrimp, you clean it. That's always my advice to people. I think the best way to ensure the highest quality shrimp, whole, head-on shrimp that you actually have to clean yourself.
Yes.
You will notice if it's not fresh, if it's head-on, skin-on, tail-on, because it will smell.
Yes.
It'll be slimy. The shells will be all janky.
Oh.
You can't get away with not fresh shrimp if it's wholly intact. I think when people peel it and then freeze it, Lord knows how long it's been sitting in that freezer. Some flash frozen technology is really good, and it's frozen at the peak of freshness. I sound like a commercial. But the IQF, the flash freezing, you can get a lot of really high quality seafood that is frozen at the source, and it keeps the integrity. But for fresh shrimp, head on, skin on, tail on, make sure it doesn't smell horrible, make sure it's not slimy, make sure the eyes are still clear. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose, always. And
you don't want them to be cloudy.
No. And also
that is bad.
That's gross. And then when you push the flesh, it should be slightly springy. If it's mushy and you're like, ew.
It's damaged.
No, it's probably super old. You also have to go to a reputable fishmonger. There should be a ton of ice. It's okay if it smells a little bit fishy, but it shouldn't be offensive. And that's what I try to tell people. Stuff that comes from the ocean, if it's the freshest possible, it smells like the ocean.
It smells like salt. It smells like marine.
Oceanic.
Seaweed.
Saline vibes, great. But if it's a day or two and it's kept on ice, it's gonna smell a little bit. But if it stinks to high heaven, run away.
You don't want that.
If it smells like ammonia,
that's
run
even
away
worse.
like the worst.
Any shrimp around that.
So for our listeners, ammoniated seafood means that it's starting to break down because it's not fresh anymore, and it's literally creating ammonia. Yes, the stuff that they use for cleaning.
NH4, yep.
Yeah, it is so disgusting. Speaking of shrimp, shells, bodies, heads, all that stuff. Another reason why I tell people when they're getting shellfish to get, whole shrimp, whole lobster, whole crab, you can use the discarded exoskeleton.
Yes.
The shells, the heads. You can use it to make stock. Shrimp stock, lobster stock, crab stock. In South Philly, one of the greatest dishes ever made is crabs and spaghetti. And they use whole crab to make that glorious crab gravy, and it just would not taste remotely the same if you just went out and I'm just gonna get a can of jumbo lump crab meat and put it in with some tomatoes. You want the shell. It imparts so much flavor, and as we were talking about earlier, it's free. Like you're paying for the whole
you're paying for the whole shrimp.
Why don't you take it, right?
Clara, how would you explain cleaning a shrimp for the first time?
Fun fact, I am a Chopped champion.
Oh!
And in the appetizer round, it was black tiger prawns, Romanesco cauliflower, fried chickpeas, and pickled raisins.
Oh,
and every single one of my friends said, you were the only one that cleaned your shrimp properly.
Whoa.
Sorry, prawns. The prawns properly. When you're deveining a shrimp, that's a really classy way of saying you're taking out the poop. You're taking out the digestive
tract.
The waste, if you will. What I was always taught is the easiest way to do it, I think the safest way to do it, is pointy kitchen shears. Joyce Chen scissors are great for this. Take the head, you peel off all the stuff, the exoskeleton. You can keep the tail on for presentation. You can do it for stock, whatever is your pleasure. And then I take the bottom leg of the scissor and I put it inside. So there'll be a really tiny hole at the base of the shrimp where you just rip the head off. Yeah. And then you put the bottom leg of the scissor inside that tiny hole and you cut all the way along the curve for shrimp.
Down its back.
And down its back. And you'll see a black, brown, orange,
sometimes
golden.
White. Sometimes
white. Sometimes there's nothing in there, and you should be able to yank out this sort of, slimy thread, if you will, of various colors depending on what the shrimp ate, and you pull that out. And then I go the extra mile, and then I'll rinse it under cold water. And because sometimes it falls apart. So depending on what the shrimp ate, depending on how old they are, ideally there's nothing in there, right? Some farm shrimp, they'll starve the shrimp before they're harvested.
Oh gosh.
So there's nothing in the digestive tract.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or you get like a really fat black lob, or your scissor punctures it, and then you get all this like these tiny black dots. Like
you need to wash it out. Yeah.
Another way to do it if you don't have kitchen shears is you can take a really sharp paring knife and make an incision along the back. But you're a professional, Jen, and you have sharp knives,
and I know where it is. Yeah.
And you know where it is, and you're also good with knives. I think for people that don't have sharp knives and aren't used to using a knife, I just feel like that could be really dangerous because shrimp are slippery. And save the shells, get rid of the poop line, the poop thread, and make sure to rinse afterwards in the coldest water that you can stand. Can you eat the whole shrimp? Are you a fan of eating a shrimp head?
I am in the habit of sucking the juices from the crawfish. If it's like a large enough shrimp and we do have the heads and I know that they were fresh, then yes.
Yes, the operative phrase, if they are fresh. One of my favorite preparations of shrimp, you go to a sushi restaurant, they have really killer seafood, everything's really pristine, and we got these from Kyoto.
Oh, yeah.
You can get, the raw shrimp is ebi, but then some places will give you the raw shrimp as your piece of fish, but then they'll deep fry the head, and then you can eat that. So
wow,
I love that. And not a lot of places do it because it has to be really fresh shrimp. I don't really eat the tail, but if it is a small enough shrimp and it's deep fried and there's like a ton of salt and all this kind of stuff on it, I will totally eat that. Sometimes you get like really small, tiny shrimp, and they're deep fried, they're battered. It's sort of just like a shrimp potato chip almost. If they're small, really thin, deep fried, bunch of salt, bunch of flavors, shrimp potato chips, shrimp crisps, what have you.
As long as they're brittle enough to chew through, because
if
it's not, then that is a choking hazard.
If it's a colossal or jumbo shrimp, I'm not eating that. No, but if it's like a little tiny shrimp, rock shrimp are also really small. So rock shrimp are, when people get popcorn shrimp, it's usually like rock shrimp, and they're pretty tiny. Like I don't even know what the U classification would be on rock shrimp. Like 100. I think I have a bag of shrimp from Whole Foods in my freezer right now. They also kind of taste a little bit funky. I was like, oh, look how cheap this 2-pound bag of shrimp is. And then I cooked with it, and they tasted really dirty.
No.
So I'm not going to throw them away. I scoured the internet, and you can soak them in milk. Any sort of dirty tasting, not dirty, but dirty tasting seafood, shrimp, catfish.
Yeah.
Sort of bottom feeding fish. You can soak it in milk. Gets rid of some of that fishy flavor.
Yeah.
And it really works.
I can explain a little bit of how that works.
Yeah, please.
Because milk is a basic liquid. It's not acidic. Whatever acid may be making that flavor, gets neutralized. And there's a little bit of osmosis going on, like the exchange of water between cells. So whatever it is kind of the stinky or dirty tasting element of it is getting flushed out because of the water molecules in milk. Out with the old, in with the new kind of thing.
Amazing. For the other nerds out there, osmosis, concentration differentials, it happens all the time in everything we do. It's happening to all of us right now.
Yes. Marination, brining, pickling.
That's a good way to explain it. That is excellent notes.
Similarly, you soak livers, like chicken livers, beef livers, pork livers, in milk for the similar reason. Because you're trying to flush out that iron taste from the blood that it used to filter.
So they talk about shrimp Creole, shrimp gumbo. You know what they not talk about? Is shrimp etouffee.
That is shocking.
Isn't that odd?
That is shocking.
When I went back and looked at the shrimp monologue, Bubba's excellent shrimp monologue, I think he did a great job. But I think as chefs, we talked about shrimp tempura is not mentioned.
Tempura, yep.
Shrimp po' boys. I mean, that is a sandwich, but it's a very specific kind of sandwich. I do think they covered a lot of ground, and I think with shrimp tempura, Japanese style of frying, tip for that I learned when I was restaurants was you don't want to overmix your batter.
Yeah, and it has to be ice cold.
Ice cold, right? My boss said you should still see dry ingredients along the rim.
Oh.
Some people will put ice cubes in it.
Or do a ice bath underneath the bowl in a bigger bowl.
So differentials, right? Differentials are a big thing in everything. The temperature differential between the ice cold tempura batter and the usually like 350 oil makes that shatteringly crisp exterior. Difference between wild and farmed shrimp.
Please tell me.
Wild is, hey, we're in the ocean and we caught you.
Yeah.
Farmed is, we built something just to raise you and you're
In
already
isolation.
trapped. You're already trapped and we're just gonna harvest you. Pros and cons. I think that the aquaculture industry has come a long way. You can get really high quality farmed seafood now. Lasso salmon is an example. It's technically farmed, but they filter the water and they do all these things, and it doesn't have that mushy, sad flesh of the old school salmon farms where they kind of swam around in filth and didn't really get exercise. Ooh. So the skin was really mushy. And I think with the farm shrimp, it's the same thing. They're filtering the water, they're with more room. And oceans and waterways aren't as clean as they once were. Mm-hmm. It's like, do I want to get some shrimp that were swimming in water that had garbage cans and last year's Gap clothes and
last year's Gap clothes,
prescription drug waste and toilet paper?
Yes.
Or do I want shrimp that was raised in a really sanitary, filtered tank where they controlled exactly what they ate? You know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing completely wrong with wild-caught fish. I think what we're getting at is there's a level of transparency that wasn't there before.
Yeah, going back to the Monterey Bay, the Seafood Watch, they are very stringent in their standards. Green, obviously, go. Sustainably raised, it's clean, ethical, with the relationship with the farmers, that's the way to go. A little bit of side-eye, like, I don't know. Red is no.
Do not consume.
And I think that's something that we should talk about as chefs and consumers and podcasters. How we eat, what we eat. You're talking about where it came from, where it was sourced. Mm-hmm. That matters so much. If the average American eats 5.5 pounds of shrimp a year and everyone's going to the same place to get shrimp and all the purveyors are going to the same place to get shrimp, what do you think is going to happen? Like, those shrimp are going to go extinct. You can't keep going back to the same well. But that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So if everybody's eating like 5.5 pounds, there's 300 million Americans. That is 1.5 billion pounds of shrimp.
That's so much shrimp.
Right. And if we're all going to the same place, it's not sustainable. And so the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch, they have specific guidelines about where you should get your shrimp from, who's sourcing it, what to avoid. And then also sort of the dark underbelly of the shrimp trade is in countries like India and Vietnam, where a lot of shrimping is done. They use child labor.
Yes. Unethical labor practice is actually very rampant in the seafood industry.
Yeah.
It's doubly important to know where your fish comes from.
Yeah, and people always say domestic. Shrimp from the Carolinas is supposed to be good. Shrimp from our friends in Canada. And I think also just use your head. It's like, if there are these colossal shrimp and it's like $5.99 a pound,
why?
Where are they getting it from?
Why?
Why
is it so cheap?
Cheaper than anything. And
how old is it? Does it look fresh?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Now we are arming you with the questions to ask when you go and buy your shrimp.
I always tell people, trust your eyes, whether it's seafood, fruits, vegetables, meat. If it doesn't look great, it probably isn't.
All right, folks, we would love to hear your tips for sourcing and cooking shrimp. Was there a method that Bubba missed? Was there a method that we missed? We would love to hear about it. We want to hear about your favorite preparation of shrimp and the best places to buy them.
Tune in next time as we explore dumplings in the movie Old Boy.
Ooh, I can't wait for that one. That one is a spicy movie. It's a spicy movie. Thank you for tuning into The Cinema Chefs. Please share your tips and tricks with our Instagram at The Cinema Chefs or drop us a line at thecinemachefs@gmail.com. We hope you enjoyed the show. This is Jen.
And Clara, signing off.
And just remember, you can become a better cook just by watching a movie. The Cinema Chefs was recorded in Los Angeles, California and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Edited by Jenn de la Vega. Music by Penguin Music, Paradise Island from Pixabay, and our logo by Nikki Newsom.